Sanbonani Dimilang, good evening and welcome to episode 280 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamandungwa Khumalo. It's a Friday edition of the Private Property Podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, you've been missing out on great content that we've been bringing to your screens every single weekday at 7. So do make sure that you go to our Facebook or our YouTube page to catch up on all those great episodes. To all our regular viewers at home, welcome back. You know how we do it every single weekday at 7 p.m. You and I have an appointment where I'm always in conversation with an expert who helps us navigate our property journey. Doesn't matter whether you're a landlord, a tenant, you're looking to buy, to sell, or to build. This is the show that helps you along the way. And talking of helping you along the way, there are, of course, a whole host of other shows across Private Property's social media pages that help you on your property journey. As it is a Friday, you can catch Chad on the Home Shoppers Show, where he gets to profile incredible properties that you can get on www.privateproperty.co.za. So if you want a sneak peek of some of what you can expect in some of the South Africa's really great properties, then do make sure that you tune in to the show. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, award-winning farmer Umbali Noko brings you the Farming Podcast, where she tackles all things agriculture. So if you've got an interest in going that route and certainly have green fingers, and want to get a sense of how you can add into the agricultural value chain, and that is a show that you want to make sure you're always plugged into. And on Wednesdays, you can catch Esty Claassen when she's always in conversation on the First Time Home Buyers Show with people who've not only walked that first time home buying journey, but have gone on to grow their property portfolios from strength to strength. So do make sure that you plug into our programs every single weekday at 8 p.m. as we help you navigate all things property. Now, talking of navigating all things property, I'm very excited about our conversation this evening. We've brought back somebody who needs no introduction. We absolutely love having her on. And this evening, we're going to be looking at top tips to revamp your home this winter. We're going to be looking at the benefits of doing some renovations during the winter season, and perhaps which renovations are actually best suited for winter, and what some of the benefits, of course, of kickstarting a project during the season are. And we're also going to be, exploring that one picky issue that I know a lot of us tend to have when it comes to home renovations, and that is the issue of budget. How do you make sure that you're still able to have your beautiful home renovations, certainly make sure it finishes on time and that you stay within budget? And to help us get a better sense of how we can make our homes more beautiful, more warm, especially as we're spending more time in our homes, I'm joined this evening by Lulu Mutsikira, who is the CEO at Namasaya, which is an award-winning, globally recognized events and interior design studio. Lulu, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us again on the show.
Hi, Zama. Always such a pleasure to join you. Thank you for having me.
It's always such a pleasure to have you on the show. And before we kickstart our conversation, I want to hear from the viewers at home. If you've done a home renovation this year, if you have, what is it? And if you haven't done one this year already, are you looking at doing a home renovation during, the second half of the year, as it were? And if so, what do you want to do to your property? Now, Lulu, I think one of the first big things, it is winter, and I've been to the hardware store almost every second day in the past 3 weeks, and it's typically very packed even during the week. So I can see that people are busy doing quite a lot of work in their properties. There are a lot of contractors in the hardware stores. So it also means that there's quite a lot of, work that they've essentially gotten right now, which makes me believe that there seems to be quite a lot of work during this winter season, or during winters in general. Perhaps take us through, renovation between winter and summer, and what the dynamic is when you do a renovation in winter versus when you do it in summer.
Okay, well, from a contractor's perspective and sort of the people in our industry, which is the interior design, the build design industry, you tend to find that you get a lot of clientele and you get a lot of contracts that pull out from summer. So the summer seasons, obviously, people have bonused December. They then go into looking for interior designers in the November, December period. And that's when we potentially or usually then start our projects, which is the January, February season. Winter has a big benefit from a renovations perspective, because while you're saying that it's quite busy, it's not as busy as you would find in the summer season. So you do have a little bit of a downhill spiral from a contractor's perspective, which means that you as the client has the potential of finding some really good contractors at better rates. You have more negotiation ability, like the fact that there's obviously less congestion in the shops. While the shops are busy, they're far less busy. People are cuddled at home, particularly now that people are working from home. I think it's twofold. I think the reason you're seeing more people at the shops is because they're working from home. So they are stealing a little bit of time to go into the hardware stores. But generally, you'd find that the shops there's a little bit of a lull because it's cold and people don't want to be there. And there's a lot more contractors there because obviously it's down season and they're trying to pick up on the smaller jobs.
Lulu's saying that for a lot of contractors, winter typically is a down season, but I follow Namasaya Creations on social media on their Instagram account, and she has been booked and busy since even before winter started. So I've been keeping track with the incredible work that the studio is doing, and absolutely love the transformation that you and the team have brought to the different properties and the different homes that you're in. So she's not one of the contractors who is, taking it easy during this winter season. So she's the exception. That means that if you want to get their services, you probably need to get in line, reach out to them, get a sense of how you can be fitted into their schedule. Now, I think one of the big things with winter, and I've certainly seen it even whenever I do renovations, is I enjoy being able to do certain kinds of renovations during the winter season, certainly in Gauteng, because it doesn't rain, right? So perhaps take us through what some of the kinds of kinds of projects rather that you're able to do during winter for those of us who experience a dry winter, and of course down on the coast they experience a very wet winter. So that's a slightly different dynamic for them. What kind of projects would they most likely be able to do during winter to take advantage of the contractors having less workers, you were saying, and of course getting quality contractors that they can work with during that period?
I love that you've mentioned that. Thank you, Zama. I think it's like you said, it's very twin-pronged. For us in the Gauteng regions or the drier regions, obviously there's a massive benefit, and that is that of no rain. We know that once you start projects in Jan, especially building projects, February, March, it's a horror. We lose so many days, so much money gets lost in the rainy seasons. And obviously within the coast, they've got it's beautiful for them to do projects in summer, but in winter it's a little bit trickier. But there's a benefit to that trickiness as well, because you've got the benefit of contractors that are sitting, waiting. A lot of the big contracts have tools down, waiting for the rainy season to pass, and so that they can't have their workers sitting and doing nothing. So they do take on the smaller projects. So there is benefit for us homeowners who want to do smaller projects in our homes to get really, really, high quality contractors, because they've tools down for the rainy season. So there's benefit on both ends. And as far as type of projects, I think obviously for the areas that have a lot of rain, what would you traditionally do is you'd focus on the projects that are internal and don't need any of your materials, etc., to sit outside, or the smaller projects. Whereas here within the drier areas, you can take advantage and go into the bigger projects. You can also take advantage and almost do more of the build projects, because prices are also a little bit discounted. Our tile shops have massive discounts during the winter season, same as during the summer seasons. I mean, it's both ways, but there are a lot of discounts during this period as well, because they see that sales do decline. And so you can do a lot of that kind of work within the drier areas. But both areas, within dry or wet, you can do all sorts of projects during winter. I think there's a misconception that winter is a time to not do anything, but it's when you're at home more often. It's when you've got the opportunity to look at your home and see the things that you need to fix. It's when you can start budgeting, as we'll have the conversation later on. It's the time that you really can it's almost a personal introspection time, but it's also a home introspection time for you to take a look at what are the areas that need that tender loving care.
Talking about how a lot of us are spending more time at home because it's winter, not just because of COVID. I mean, I myself am in the middle of, some revamping in one of the properties, and it's because I get to be at home more. It is winter, so you're able to see some of the things that kind of need fixing. And I think one of the big things, and we'll talk about it shortly when it comes to budgeting, it's also about me making sure that I get all my ducks in a row so that I can, afford the services of Lulu, and just to bring it in my space and to do the interior design work that I certainly want to get done. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, or if you just recently joined us this evening, we are looking at top tips for revamping your home this winter. I want to find out from you at home if you've done any home renovations since the year started, and if you have, what project was it, and which area of the house were you renovating, and how was the experience? I think home renovations can be so daunting as well as exciting, and I think very different people tend to have different experiences with how they manage it. And if you still want to do home renovations for the rest of the year, which rooms or which part of your property do you have eyed out for those projects? Do comment down here below. We certainly do want to hear from you. I see some of our fans who are watching on Facebook. Colleen Jansen, I see you. Jose Humela, I see you. And one of our top fan gang members, Uglad Shirinda, is also on Facebook. Do continue sharing your green hearts down here below. We always absolutely love engaging with you. Now, Lulu, I think one of the big things, and I'd like you to help us make the distinction between revamping or doing a renovation when you are living in an apartment, so a relatively smaller space, versus if you're living in a house which is bigger. What are some of the, I'll say, tips would you have for people who work with slightly smaller spaces and are looking to revamp those smaller spaces versus those who have a bit more room and can sort of play around slightly more with their properties?
I think obviously the first area that you really need to put focus on is the budget. And we will have like we always do a budget chat a little bit later. But I think smaller homes, obviously you've got the benefit of being able to do more for less. Whereas bigger homes, sometimes you tend to find that you start thinking you're doing a small little job, but it can quite quickly, grow and become. It
goes 0 to 100 very quickly.
Correct. Yeah. Really quickly. I always say to clients, particularly in the smaller spaces, that they should really focus on the smaller aesthetic changes because they make a massive difference in smaller spaces. Whereas in a bigger space, a scatter cushion might not make that much of an impact, but in a smaller space, you changing the scatter cushions in your living room area can make a world of difference. So sometimes, while we would love to be able to do everything and change everything up, sometimes it's the smaller aesthetics changes that can really make a difference within the smaller spaces. Small spaces also, focus on the areas that you are always going into or always using. I'm a big lover of kitchen renovations, bathroom renovations, as well as bedroom renovations. I think people's bedrooms really should get much more love than they do. People spend so much time in their bedrooms, and yet you find that they've got the least amount of love. Everybody wants to do all the spaces that everybody else sees, but the space that you deserve, more than anything, people tend to really overlook those spaces. So I say bedrooms are a beautiful space to start off, particularly in winter, because you can really make a few changes in your space that can really create a beautiful warmth in a room. The type of rug that you choose to put in, the type of cushioning that you choose to put in, the accessory pieces, for instance, lamps, not massive changes, but small changes that can really make a massive difference. This is for smaller spaces. Obviously, in the bigger homes, if you really want impact, you really got to go, big or go home. So you want your kitchen to really look stunning. You want your bathrooms to really look stunning, but also the living area becomes so critical in a bigger space because it's really the invitation to the home for a lot of people. On both ends, though, it's just very important to really have an understanding of what your almost your movability track is, or what your value chain is in as far as your home. And that's where you should put your most focus. So if you're an entertainer and you're always at the patio, that's where your focus must be. If you're a person who loves to cook, why not make the kitchen a place that you can really cook with love? Personal preference plays a huge role in creating the type of home that you want.
We are taking your questions and comments at home this evening as we explore tips when it comes to revamping your home this winter. I'm in conversation with Lulu Mutsikira, who's a CEO at Namasaya. And we've got a comment here from one of our viewers who also is a regular guest, Mike Addison, saying, careful with things like changing garages into living spaces, municipal permission and approval needed, and insurance implications. And I think let's get to that one, right? Because I think one of the things that we are seeing people do with their homes, and I know that you've dealt with this before, we've even had a conversation with it the last time you were here, around making sure that even when you extend your property, you still stay within, whether it's the municipal bylaws of the area that you live in, and you don't alter your property in such a way that should you have an insurance claim, for example, it's not going to pay out because you didn't follow the rules with that particular renovation. How can people make sure that they're actually not overstepping? Because I think oftentimes people who live in freestanding properties have this notion of, well, it's my property, I can do whatever I want with it. And you even get that kind of sentiment with people living in sectional title communities, but it's easier to sort of nip it in the bud with them because you'd say, here are the rules, and the rules are very clear about what you can and cannot do. But of course, it's a different dynamic altogether when you have your freestanding property. And I've seen a lot of homeowners saying, this is my house, I pay, your rates and taxes. Why should I have to, why should I be restricted in terms of what I can or cannot do with it? How can viewers at home make sure that when they're revamping their properties, particularly those who are living in freestanding properties, are abiding by, whether it's the municipal bylaw, and are not making any changes that could come back to bite them later on?
The rule of thumb is, if they can see it, you need to get municipal approval. It's as easy as that. And even if they can't see it, if it's on the outside, get the municipality to approve. It's so devastating when you go into a home and you want to do a renovation, you ask for the house plans, and the plans are 20 years old. The house looks nothing like the plans that you've gotten. It's so important. He's very, very correct. Firstly, every home, nobody is exempt, needs to get the correct municipal approvals when they're making renovations, particularly when you're going outside. When you're going inside your home, for instance, if you're changing a toilet, if you're changing a cistern, if you're going to, break down your kitchen and put in a new kitchen unit, the municipality does not need to look at that. They're not interested in that. But if there's any aesthetic change to your home outside, particularly that could potentially affect your neighbor. So if you're changing your window, or if you're putting a double story, imagine your neighbor next door gets beautiful sunlight and suddenly you put in a second floor to your home. That hugely affects your neighbor, and you need to make sure that the powers that be have approved that, so you don't have to have those fights with neighbors. You don't have to have those fights with anybody. In actual fact, you just show them a paper and you say, listen, I've gotten the approvals that I needed. So very, very true. Very important to get municipality to approve your updated house plans. If any changes are being made on the outside of your home, whether it be a small little window or a garage that's been converted, that's a massive one. And I don't know why people believe that it isn't a building change. Changing a garage into a room is a change, and it's outside facing, so it needs the right approvals.
This actually is a great way to segue to that very uncomfortable aspect that people tend to want to run away from, and more often than not mismanage. And that is, of course, the issue of the budget. I think one of the big things with home renovations is often a lot of people at home have big aspirations about what they want to do. Some of them want to get the types of, or do renovations so they can look like some of the properties that you see on the private property website, but they don't have that kind of budget. You almost want a Ferrari, but you've got a Toyota budget. And then you're very demanding to the service providers that you work with that actually, I want the Ferrari with these finishes. And yet your budget, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to do so. I think let's look at, firstly, how should people at home approach the issue of budget in terms of being realistic with what they can get given how much they have. Because I think there's one group of people who are unrealistic and don't want to hear. We're not going to be talking to them. Now we're talking to people who probably just don't have a sense of how much things typically cost. And let's say whether you've got 20,000, for example, you've got 50,000, and you're like, I want to be able to do a home reno with this amount. How can they start sort of expectation managing themselves so that they know that if you've got 20K or 30K, whatever amount it is, this is the kind of renovation or revamp you're able to do with that budget?
Thank you. I think the first part is really to have a self-talk. It's very important to know thyself.
Self-talk is important. It's very important.
Very important. Jot down what your budget is, how much money you've got, and jot down what you would like to do. And be open to the fact that what you've got and what you would like to do may not match. That's that self-talk, that real talk that we have with ourselves. Then go about finding comparative quotes. I find a lot of clients, including our very own clients, and I mean, we love it, but it's also it's not responsible. Clients tend to go with the first person that they find. Beautiful for us, not so great for them. You've got so many resources nowadays. It's no longer a case of you have to have a referral from somebody, that you heard about 15 years ago, and that's the person you use. We've got so many resources nowadays to be able to fact check, as well as to do comparisons between suppliers, between interior designers, between builders. I find a lot of people go with the first builder that they see, and that's such a dangerous thing to do. Get comparative quotes. It's very important. It also makes our life easier as service providers, because then we can justify the costs of the things that we're charging, and we can have a real conversation. It's very tough to have a conversation with you, Zama, if you don't know what the general cost of anything is, and you are just saying it's expensive because it doesn't fit your budget. You can understand how that's a tricky conversation to have from beginning to end. And so having a comparative quote, I love having conversations with clients who say, Lulu, while your thing sounds great, we saw somebody who's doing it at a fraction of the price. Then I can say, true, but mine is this. Or fair enough, let me see what I can do. Then that allows for a proper negotiation. So if you are educated as the consumer, it becomes very easy for you to not get cheated. It also becomes very easy to have a proper conversation with your contractor around the things that you want. Then we can have an honest and legitimate chat around your budget, what can be done and what cannot be done. And then you have to be open to the reality that, and I mean, in my industry, 3/4 of the time, the budget of the dream, they just do not, they are mismatched. They are not in the same WhatsApp group.
As you're saying that, you remind me of that sketch that tends to make the rounds on social media, where it's a drawing of the horse, and they're saying season 1, season 2, season 3, and then the subsequent seasons, you kind of see that whoever was drawing that kind of lost the steam. And oftentimes that happens with home renovations, right? That especially if you're doing, let's say, the whole house sort of in its entirety, as opposed to just one room, perhaps the first 2 or 3 rooms go really well and you're able to finish everything from top to bottom. And then somewhere along the line, imali phele, or the contractor starts sort of doing half here and there because imali phelile. And I think more often than not, it's because there wasn't that serious conversation, as you're saying, where even the contractor says, if you only have 100,000, you're not going to have a top billing kitchen, because at a minimum, your top billing kitchen is going to be 250,000, for argument's sake. And kitchens are that expensive. And so if you're sitting with just 100,000 and you say, I want, my top billing kitchen, including appliances, that's an unrealistic expectation. And I think oftentimes a lot of us struggle with that, because we also just, as you're saying, haven't gone out there to do those comparisons. I think the big tip that I'd probably give to viewers at home is go to the hardware stores yourself to find out how much the material costs, right? So as you're working with the different contractors, actually ask them what material would be required. Get the quote for the material only, because that also just gives you a sense of just the cost of the material needed to do what you want. Never mind the services and, of course, the labor of the contractor that you're going to work with. That should help you get a sense that if your contractor then says, actually, your dream kitchen is going to cost you 250,000, for argument's sake, you understand why, because the material alone could have easily been 180. And so you understand that the difference then is their labor and an associated cost. So that's something that's very crucial, and I think a lot of us tend to, unfortunately, not think about it. And I think one of the really big things, Lulu, when it comes to budget, how can viewers at home sort of stretch their budget as much as possible? So what are some of the changes and tweaks that they can make in their respective homes that still sort of bring out their homes and makes it look more modern and more fresh, and they don't have to break the bank? Because I think with some people, you only have X amount of money and you do want to do something and sort of spicing up the space. I think one of the realities is we're spending so much time at home, so perhaps you want a little bit of a change. So what are some of those small tweaks that we can do at home that really do change our space?
There's so much, and it's so broad. We can go on for 3 hours, but I think the first thing is, don't focus on the massive, the mammoth task of breaking everything down. Sometimes you don't need to change your cupboards in totality. Sometimes they just need a paint job, especially if you've got more the older school homes that have those really authentic wooden cabinetry. You don't need to. That just needs a beautiful paint job. You can change the color of the paint of that kitchen, and suddenly you've got a brand new kitchen. You can change backsplashes. Changing fitments is such an underrated joy in a home. Just going into your bathroom and changing that tap and changing literally that shower head can make a massive, massive difference. Retiling just the floor or retiling just the walls can make a massive difference in the overall aesthetic of a space. So sometimes don't look at it as the whole area is a disaster, but start to look at what are the small things that could make a massive difference. What are the small things that are really irritating me about the space? And then start changing those small things. Like I said, fitments are a big one. Backsplashes in kitchens are a big one. Small furniture items. So it's not a case of getting a new couch. You potentially can just reupholster your couch. Change up the scatter cushions. We've all had, those scatter cushions for 10 years. It's time to get fluffier ones. It's time. So you can make those small little changes and you'll see a fluffy scatter cushion is very different from that flat one. We know which one I'm talking about. That one that's
I know exactly. Because I've got that one. That's why I'm laughing. I'm like, yo, Luliang exposed. Lulu, I want to bring in some of the questions and comments from our viewers at home, whether you're watching us on Instagram, on YouTube, or on Facebook. I'm in conversation this evening with Lulu Mutsikira as we look at tips for revamping your home this winter. On Instagram, we've got Ulu Tuzwane saying, I'm guilty of neglecting the bedroom, loving the tips on the revamp via what seems like small items for the space. Also on Instagram, Ukiya Mabe saying, how does paint color impact the look and feel of your rooms? Are different paint colors for different rooms advisable? I love this question because sometimes people want to, change every single room to have its own color. How does the paint color affect the overall aesthetic and flow of a space?
Such a beautiful question. So firstly, paint or color has personality. It's such an incredibly important aspect of your home. People, when choosing a paint color, be sure to understand what the psychology of that paint color is. And I mean, on our page, we've done many sort of posts around the psychology of color and the importance of choosing the right color for the right rooms. Paint has personality, color has personality. So the colors that you put in specific rooms will create a very specific feeling or energy for that space. It's been proven. Blue in certain tonalities is a very tranquil color. Green is a very earthy color. It ignites growth, but there's tonalities to those colors. Now, in as far as painting a home various different colors, I'll never say, as an interior designer, I'll never say no, that's not acceptable. But you use the word flow. Flow is such an important aspect of a home as well. And cohesiveness in a home is also so important. And so if every room is a different color, you do tend to lose that cohesiveness and that beautiful flow. So I always say, base your home with a neutral base color that can then flow from room to room. And then look at doing sort of backsplashes or feature walls that can then have the colors that you're trying to imbue in the home or the pop of personality in the home. But there's no perfect science. So while I'm saying that, I'm being very cognizant that cohesiveness and flow is the real focus. But, we all have different personalities, and some of us want that color everywhere, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just be careful of not creating a very mixed up.
Not creating is pity, because I think Lulu, sometimes people create this pity with too many colors, right? Because there are certain ways that lots of colors still make sense. They're still cohesive, and the flow of the property or the apartment is not disturbed. And then sometimes there's no order. You didn't take into consideration perhaps even the lighting in your space, the kind of furniture that you're also going to use. So you really do have to look at it from a very holistic perspective, and not just what paint you're going to use on your walls or what feature wall you're going to use. But I love that, because as you point out, we've got different personalities. So perhaps you don't want to go with, bland colors or more neutral colors. You do want a little bit of, color in your property. And perhaps sometimes one of the ways to get that color isn't with paint, but with the furniture that you use. One of the things that I really love, and I've even seen it on your Instagram page, is how within a certain space, let's say the couch can be that, that mustard. So there's that really nice pop of color within a space. So the wall itself is still painted in a fairly neutral color, but the ways that the furniture then is what gives that pop of color. I'm going to squeeze in a few more questions and comments from our viewers at home this evening. We've got Anelda Everton saying, I have a huge problem with the leaking roof, so I'm doing a complete roof makeover. No other renovations, only painting the outside for a facelift. And this is a great time to do roof maintenance, especially in Gauteng, because we know we're not going to have rain. So you really have ample time to work on it. By the end of winter, your roof is going to be sorted. Umata Shingange, she's got nice life problems. She's saying, I can't wait for my house to be old enough for major renovation. It just sounds so exciting. But for now, I'll stick with mini makeovers. Mike Addison comes back, and this is such a great tip, saying that gas stoves are more popular as part of a dream kitchen reno. You want to make sure that the contractor fits this properly and is compliant. I think a lot of people want gas. A lot of people think gas is, a better option, especially right now when we look at the continuous blackouts that we're living through. But work with professionals. And we'll actually end off on that note, Lulu, when it comes to working with trusted contractors, because I know that this is something that you and I have touched on in our previous conversations. And then we've got Umata Shingange saying that people having top billing dreams with how to decorate your apartment budget. rough, and that's one of those really good things that you need to make sure. Those are one of those key things that you need to make sure to just check yourself. There's nothing wrong with not having a big budget, but be clear about what is possible with your budget. And over on Instagram, Umbali is saying, I would like to revamp the outside for entertainment. Amo Amplified saying, too cold for renovations, but would love to know a little things to make my home more cozy. So how can people make their home slightly more cozy? So you're not looking to renovate. And I think, this is one of those things that a lot of us probably are not that great at. That's why we end up having the scatter cushions that are very thin, because you're thinking, okay, maybe this is adding a bit of, texture to your apartment, but you're still not sure. How can we make just what we already have just feel a bit more cozy?
It's such a great question. I think it's literally the small ads. The throws are so important because, they add warmth. Anything that adds warmth to a space becomes so critical. The type of rug that you choose, we tend to choose flat, particularly in living spaces, flat-based rugs or flat-based carpentry that doesn't have that fluff. And in winter, it's so nice to just add a little bit of fluff to the space. Candles, such a beautiful add to a home that can make such a difference in creating that again, just that level of warmth. And if you're going to go a little bit of a step further, consider adding a specific wallpaper or a type of wallpaper into the space, really to enclose the space a little bit and add some warmth. And this is really for homes that are generally cold, whether it be summer and winter. But in as far as adding a little bit of warmth and that winter coziness, it's really more about the accessorizing and adding of those specific colors that create a lot more warmth. So the cool tones like the beiges and the whites, those are very summer-based colors. They look great in summer. But in winter, you want darker tonalities, you want warmer colors, you want mustards, you want those throws that have fluff on them to really give you that sense that you're in an enclosed space and you're a little bit more cozy. And those are easy solves. Those are not expensive solves. Those are easy solves. I always say to clients who are like me, who like to change things up a little bit, I always say, have your winter collection and then have your summer collection. And when winter comes in, just take those scatter cushions, put them in the cupboard, and bring in your winter collection, and you're set. You're ready for the winter months, and you've got that warmth in your home.
And I think one of the great things with those changes, Lulu, is that you're also able to feel like you've stepped into a slightly different home. So it's familiar, but it's different, as opposed to feeling like you're in the same space throughout the whole year, and probably even getting to a place where you're quite frustrated with yourself, thinking, haven't changed anything for over a year or 2 years. So when you really change it according to the season, you also do get that sense of, experiencing your space in a slightly different way. We've got Ozianda K on Instagram saying, I think kitchens get the least love in apartments, now considering ways to give mine a personality. I think this is a great place to actually leave it at, Lulu. How can we give kitchens a personality, especially because if you don't yet have the budget to do a complete kitchen renovation, because we know how expensive that can be, what can you do to just give your kitchen a bit of a personality? Perhaps it doesn't even need a complete overhaul, but you really do want to make it feel a bit warm, as opposed to it being, just the cupboards and then your toaster and your kettle on the stand. How can we sort of personalize and add a little bit of warmth to the kitchen?
So already I'm fighting you because you just said just your toaster and your kettle. There's no such thing as just a toaster and just the kettle. If it's sitting on the outside, it needs a designer. That's always what I say. But a backsplash is a great starting point for changing up a kitchen and making it look special without breaking the bank. Your tile, the little areas that are tiled or painted, look at interesting backsplash ideas that you could add to that kitchen to really give it a lease on life. And then those accessories that we don't care about, those can really create such magic in a space. Put in a plant in your kitchen. Put in a tray, put a plant, put, something cute, a vase in that space. Massive difference. That toaster and that kettle, Zama, make sure that it's pretty so that it adds to the space. But truly, fitments and backsplashes are the easiest go-to. Add a light fixture. Those are the easiest go-tos in order to just change up your kitchen ever so slightly without making a massive difference. And the handles. The handles. Handles cost so little. And if you just take a different lease on handles or give a different lease on life with the handles, you'll see miracles.
Lulu, I think this is a great place to leave it at. Any final tip for our viewers at home who are looking to do a revamp of their home this winter that can help them on their project?
I think firstly, don't view winter as a non-project time. It's an excellent time to do projects. In actual fact, there was a lady who had said that it's too cold to do the outside. But think about it. The outside is a perfect time to do now, so that by the time summer comes, you're ready. Your home is ready for summer. This is the time to do your pool. This is the time to put that decking. This is the time to get your patio done, so that by the time summer comes, you are 150% ready. So there is no perfect time for renovations, but winter is as good a time as any for renovations. In actual fact, you might find that there's a lot more benefit in winter than there is in summer for you. Budget, so important. That's the first starting point for anybody who wants to do any renovations in their home. And I think the last piece of advice really really speaks to, you should look at what can be done versus how mammoth the task is. Bite-sized chunks. It's a process. It's not a one-time deal. It's not buying a garment. A home is a place that you're there for the long haul. And because you're there for the long haul, you can take your time in making it spectacular.
And that's a great place to leave it at, Lulu. Your home is like running a marathon. It's not a sprint. So give yourself the time to take it room by room. You don't need to finish everything within the month or within a season. And you really do want to make sure that you take your time and you've got enough reserves and you have the right finances in order to do your project. The one thing we didn't speak on, and I'm really going to ask Lulu to come back for us so that we can speak on this one, because it's another contentious one when we do home renovations, and it's around contractors and how we can work better with our contractors when we're doing our home renovations, how we can make sure that we choose the right contractor, how we can go about even interviewing, contractors. Lulu was mentioning how sometimes their clients don't go and look at different quotes. And that's great for the contractor, but of course it isn't always great for you at home. So Lulu, I'm already, putting it out there that we're definitely going to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, guys. And I'm always happy to come on board. Thank you.
And that is Lulu Mutsikira, who's the CEO at Namasaya. And that brings us to the end of our show this evening. If you want to see the incredible work that Lulu and her team do, I would definitely urge you to follow them on Instagram. I absolutely love their page. On Tuesdays, they give you interior design tips that can help you make your home slightly more homier. And I think for those of you who are even looking at what are the different ways you can make your space cozy, how you can choose better color for your walls, you definitely want to get onto their Instagram page for all of those great tips. Well, that brings us to the end of our show this week. Thank you so much for tuning into the Private Property Podcast with myself, Uzamantungwa Khumalo. I'll be back on your screens on Monday evening at 7 p.m. Do hope that this weekend you're going to be staying home and staying safe.